It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retired. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebesta. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you're listening to us online. Maybe you found us on the radio. Regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, click subscribe, and better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you would just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30, 40 plus years, having an identity, and then just magically shutting it off and going into retirement without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our new series on optimizing retirement. Today, we cover 3 ways to find meaning. To truly optimize life in retirement, you have to start with the end goal in mind, and that is meaning. Meaning is found a number of different ways, including difficult seasons and experiences we've had. In this podcast, Ben explains how these 3 ways to find meaning are all different, but can all lead to the very same destination. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, we are back and we are continuing this mini-series that we are calling Optimizing Retirement. We've got another dynamite show on tap here today. We're going to cover 3 ways to find meaning. Man, this is just going to be a really, I don't want to say deep and heavy, but this is going to be a very foundational show that's going to kind of pave the path for the next several shows. Just a reminder, we got a brand new Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Join a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. You're going to find more tips on living repurposed, Facebook Lives, Q&A sessions, all to come. So go to facebook.com and search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Click join to be a part of this community of people ready to make their retirement everything it was supposed to be. Ben Tejas joins me on the show right now. And Ben, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this idea or this analogy of the ant and the grasshopper. And then last week, that kind of led us into what we called the time, money, health continuum. And we basically said, you've got to have some combination of all 3 or some of the 3 to kind of have this ability to enjoy life and how that tied to retirement. Let's do a quick little recap on that show.
Well, yeah, I think we kind of went through different ages and kind of which of those 3 that people have more of and how they contribute to how your life goes. And I keep coming back to, regardless of your age, how important health is, right? And this weekend was at our family cabin and ended up sitting down with a neighbor down the road, and he is in his mid 70s, and again, this conversation came up. We're having coffee on our deck overlooking the lake and talking about how good life is, and he says, it is, but he's got this really terrible heart condition, and he had planned on and saved money for and had this idea of what retirement was going to look like someday.
Right.
And it was going to look like him doing woodworking projects, and he was going to redo his whole house, and he had all these plans, all these tools to do that stuff. And at the end of the day, he said, I'm unable to do it because my health won't allow me to do it. Right. I literally run out of energy too soon. And it was heartbreaking for me, but yet I came back to this episode of how important that health piece is to just getting life, just getting enjoyment out of life.
Yeah. And again, a big fallacy in retirement planning, which we're going to cover in weeks ahead, is let's defer life to 65 and beyond. But unfortunately, we have now wasted some very precious years because our health just naturally declines. So again, there's different times in life where it's more optimal to do things. And if you're in our Facebook Facebook group, I did a Facebook Live last week, and I stressed this idea of when is the best age. The best age is right now. No, I don't care if you're 65, 75, 55, 45. The best age in your life is right now, because this is the time. There's always going to be an optimal time to do things, and that's right now.
Yeah, and if your health can be improved, right, going back to the health thing, you can make changes today in your health. You can do things right now that will not only give you more enjoyment for your age you're in now, but also down the road.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, if you can optimize your retirement by really optimizing your life today, that is, I think, winning this whole retirement thing.
100%. And that's kind of the foundational message we're trying to get across. If you really want to have the best retirement, that starts before retirement. And it's not just financial. Everybody wants to talk about the financial piece of retirement planning. And man, it goes a lot deeper than that. And that's what this series is all about. So today, Ben, we're going to talk about step number 2, optimizing retirement. And that is finding 3 ways to find meaning. And that is going to be the underlying message of today's show. Now, let's just kind of talk about that, because this whole idea of meaning. I mean, you could take this 100 different directions, and you could, there's 1,000 books written on meaning. How do you want to kind of navigate through this pretty sizable topic?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about purpose and meaning and calling a lot on our show, and I think, what I would look at, Jared, is just picture somebody on their deathbed. And it's tough. I've actually been dealing with this just in some people in our community, and I think about what do you want? What does somebody want as they're unwinding and they're winding down their life? What are the things that really they want to feel in those moments?
Yeah. Well, I can imagine one thing that they want is probably not to have any regrets. I know how much regret hurts me, and I'm certainly not on my deathbed, but that hurts. So I can imagine that's probably near the top.
Yeah, I think every time that I've had the opportunity to walk with people nearing the end of their life and talk with folks that are certainly getting older, and one thing we love to do is look back at positive experiences, negative ones too. But it's always this idea of regret always comes up, and I wish I had done it differently. It's such a common thing. So if you can get to that point, picture yourself years ahead of time, Lord willing, where you are coming to the end of your life, and you say, I was able to live without regrets. That's a huge thing.
Another thing has to be, just knowing that you lived a very good life, a life well lived. We all want that.
Yeah, and I think that you meant something, that you did things that impacted those around you. There was, you made a kingdom impact. Ways to talk about that is like, if I'm nearing the end of my life and I know what's on the other side, that's one of the beautiful things about being a believer. We know what's to come. I was just talking with a friend of mine about yet another person that I know in our community. A guy I used to do some work with that has stage 4 cancer, and it's so hard because when you don't know, and this individual, I don't know if he knows for sure what's on the other side. That's tough.
No.
Death is scary when you don't know what's on the other side. So when you can be coming towards the end of your life, and you can combine knowing, where you're going, and also knowing that you did live a life that impacted people around you, that you made a difference for somebody, you made a difference. That is exactly what you're looking for in that time.
You mentioned in your book, Repurposed, that teachers tend to retire very well. And you theorize the reason why is because they have huge generational impacts by the time somebody's been a teacher for 20, 30, 40 plus years.
Yeah, they can look back on their life and say, man, I impacted this person, and really walk through life with those contacts. That's a lot of meaning there. It's a lot of ways. And if you're a teacher, it doesn't matter, whatever line of work you're in, if you are able to contribute to those around you, that is such a valuable thing, specifically as you age, and it is a huge way of finding meaning.
Gives peace, and that abolishes regret. near the end of life. So what we want to do here with today's episode is kind of reverse engineer it. We're starting with the end goal, meaning in mind, and then we're going to kind of work our way backwards here over the next several shows. So today we're going to cover 3 ways to find meaning, and just a little preface as we go through these 3, and Ben, we can kind of just discuss this in just a moment here, but it's not that everybody fits into each one of these categories. It's not like one person is this and another is this. We're all going to be kind of maybe a mix of all 3.
Yeah, and you might be able to relate to all 3.
Right.
And you might have times in your life where certainly one or the other might be giving you meaning. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that everybody should have some aspect of all of these in their life, and likely will, in order to find that lasting long-term meaning.
So 3 ways to find meaning. Number 1, the first one we're going to cover here today, is serving. This is kind of really the essence of Repurpose and everything that it stands for.
Yeah, when I wrote the book, that was one of the key lines in there that we really talked about a lot, is that the foundation is to be retiring to something, not from something. So many folks out there are in a career for 30, 40, 50 years, and they're going fast and they're working hard, and then they just stop, right? And they don't replace that with something else. So foundational is doing something different. And the only way we know that working provides us an ability to impact those around us, on our team, in our community, whatever it is. We can't just walk away from that without replacing that level of service and doing something for others.
Yeah, a key story in your book, Repurpose, was Jim. He was the factory worker. He retired early because of your advice, didn't replace it, and it just really kind of turned into a mess for Jim. And again, that's a key point. I think the idea of continuing to live with purpose, again, you had purpose. We've mentioned that on the show. Having that, but also too, I think it goes deeper than that too. It's really discovering what your calling is. We say that at the beginning of every show, retirement's not the end, it's the beginning. This is a time for new things, which really isn't the way that society portrays it. But I think it all falls under this heading of serving, giving, purpose. All those words kind of mean the same thing to me in some respects.
Yeah, and I don't think you can leave a legacy, and you can't really live well without making an impact for others. That is huge. So serving is only possible when you look outside of yourself, right? Being a person who is leaving a lasting legacy involves other people. Yeah. It just doesn't work any other way. So that is a key component to all of this, is serving others.
Some examples of this I think of my dad, who I've mentioned on the show a number of times. He'll be 80 next year, by the way. I know he listens to the show, so hey, Dave. And if you know him personally, he's still works part-time. He's involved in city council. He's up for re-election. The guy just goes. I mean, he's busier than I am, always has meetings. I can't keep up with them, and he's almost 80 years old, and just I couldn't imagine him any different. Another guy is Dennis Benson. We've had him on the show. Go back and look up and search his name. That was a fabulous episode. I think Dennis is in his low 70s. Here in our community, he's the photographer. In fact, there was just a big summer concert series here in our town, and he's everywhere. And he's on Facebook, and he's posting pictures, and he just can't wait to learn new things. And then there's the Sowers Ministry. We've talked about this a little bit. Sowers, I can't think of what it stands for off the bat, but their slogan is RV with a purpose. So here's a group of people who are retired. They've got RVs, and they travel all over North America and just serve for 1 or 2 weeks at a time. All those people, they're finding meaning out of that, which is a fabulous way to live life in retirement.
Yeah, and it's a way. So whether you're retired or not, every single one of those people, and if you look around you at both your own life and the people that you're in community with, if they are the type of person that is giving to others in some way, generally speaking, significance, right? I mean, we talk about being significant over time. If you are pouring into other people, if you are advancing kingdom causes, if you are serving others, that is a phenomenal way to find not joy, but real meaning, like not happiness. I mean, we're talking like deep meaning.
Yep. And again, if we find somebody in retirement who is lacking a little bit of meaning or joy, one of our first go-tos that we're we're going to lay at their feet and say, go and serve, go and find places to give, find more purpose, because that is a foundational aspect of this whole idea. Reason number 2, or way number 2, that people can find meaning, and this is experiences. Ben, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common that people say, I just look forward to retirement so that I can have bigger, better experience with my kids and grandkids and spend more time with them. So that, without a doubt, gives us meaning, and it gives us really something bigger than ourselves, is just being in community and traveling, with our kids and enjoying great experience with our family.
We covered the Just Want to Have Fun retiree in our retiree profiles. I think Just Want to Have Fun's probably fit this category, so to speak, of where they find meaning, because Just Want to Have Fun retirees, that's what they want to do. They just want to hang out and have experiences and take pictures and go to the lake and play with grandkids. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's they can maybe have a little bit more service oriented, maybe not, but end of the day, this is how these folks really feel fulfilled by the end of the day.
Yeah, but I think it's fleeting, right? I mean, you constantly look for the next thing, right? So it's not as lasting and as long-term as the serving, because there's a part of that can look, self-centered, if you will. Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I do fun things all the time, right, and vacation, all those things, and there is great memories and meaning that comes from that. But again, I think that if we value the experience with people over the thing, that is a way to find meaning.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the word memories. People that love experiences, they get tremendous joy out of the memories of all those experiences. And last week we talked about some of the benefits of memories. And by the way, we're going to have a whole show just dedicated to that, maybe next week or the week after. But that is something that it's hard to quantify, but you can't discredit that it doesn't exist. So again, people that are really experience-based, man, they hold tight to those memories, and that brings tremendous joy, and certainly not wrong in a lot of respects. But people tend to kind of jump around or be maybe a combination of these three. The last one, Ben, is suffering. And this one, I had a hard time kind of putting this one on paper, but I had a hard time not including this in the list. And we've made a number of examples, but how do you say to somebody like your life may find the most meaning when we're actually in maybe some of the harder times of our life? That's a hard bridge to jump sometimes.
It is, but you start with any of these examples. Like if you see somebody that's dealing with health issues, and you see somebody that's lost a loved one, you start at it. And my pastor recently had a great sermon on this. And you start with saying, well, we can't understand today because we're looking at this situation. We're looking at this experience through the lens of a fallen world. We're looking at it through the lens of really sin, right? We know that our world's broken and there is sin in the world, and when we see things happening, even if it is long-term good, right? We can't see that because we're looking at it through the lens of a fallen world.
You got to think of how many charities, how many nonprofits, how many fundraisers were all born out of the suffering of somebody. I mean, it's almost every single time, which again is hard. It's a hard pill to swallow in life, but yet at the end of the day, that's where a lot of times, unfortunately, that's where meaning is born from.
Yeah, and we don't see it. We don't see that years down the road, what came out of that suffering many times. I've had in my own life those aha moments where it's like, oh, that's what God was trying to show me. That's what, and you can say, well, did God allow that to happen? Did he orchestrate that? I don't understand, all the theology behind it, but I know in my life, there's times where you walk through something that is deeply painful. Certainly, I look at our kids. When your kids go through something, that hits home. Yeah. My oldest daughter, Lauren, went through when she was first. In fact, we found out when she was before she was born that she was going to have some major kidney issues, and one of her kidneys wasn't forming right. And there was a while we didn't even think we were going to. She was going to be born at all, and those were some of the hardest days for my wife and I, as we walked together through that. God brought us so closer than we've ever been before or since, and showed us things about ourselves that we would have never known had we not walked through that. For my daughter, too, long story short, she ended up being born, and she appeared perfectly healthy, but had like 5 surgeries in the first 5 or 6 years of her life, and finally we removed this kidney. Today she's 16 years old, plays sports, totally healthy, but she's got one kidney. Yeah. I had no idea how those experiences were going to form her into who she is today. Guess what she wants to do? Of course, it's in the medical field. Right. She's a CNA. She's pursuing to be an OBGYN someday, and she wants to use that. And I know God had it in her life plan that, part of her suffering, and man, those were hard days. You're sitting in the hospital, and your kid is crying in pain, and you can do absolutely nothing. If you're listening today, you may have had an experience like that. And I can tell you for certain that it did create meaning. It did create, for my wife and I, lasting, important part of who we are today because of that really painful experience.
Yep. And again, lots of times if we are working with retirees and we're trying to help them find their purpose or their new assignment or a different calling, what we will do is we'll dig into the past, and lots of times we'll say, hey, what are some experiences you've had and positive experiences, but what are the negative ones? When are the seasons where you really felt at your lowest? Because that might be a clue. So again, don't discredit the suffering. Whether you're retired, not retired, whether you are struggling with X, Y, and Z, sometimes the suffering is the clue. It's kind of the X factor.
In fact, Jared, it can be the most, the biggest way that you can find meaning is looking at that suffering moment. And I look at Jesus. I mean, you can no doubt the ultimate meaning for his life was his suffering and death. I mean, that was the biggest meaning that you could ever have, right? Yep. Is salvation through a painful time, right? And I think you look at that and you stand back, you say, okay, if I'm walking through something today that's deeply painful, number one, can I look at it through the lens of the cross? Can I look at it through that lens versus through the lens of sin? And what is God trying to show me through this? And where will I be on the other side?
All right, so we're talking about 3 ways to find meaning: serving, experiences, and suffering. And again, your retirement's going to look a little bit different no matter which one you kind of lean towards or have an affinity to. But Ben, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you're missing the spiritual side of life. It won't matter how many experiences you have. It won't matter how much you serve. There's going to be a key piece that's missing that we have to touch on.
Yeah, your ultimate meaning is going to come from really discovering who you are in Christ, right? And being in relationship with your Creator. That's how we're made. God made us that way so that we're looking for Him. So whether we're going through suffering or experiences or we're serving others, part of who we are in part of our DNA is looking for that relationship.
So this idea of identity and purpose, it's kind of easy to answer that question and find that, when we're working. And that's what makes the struggle so real for retirees. And Ben, you've got some scripture on this topic.
Yeah. Also, part of my pastor's sermon recently came from Acts 17, verse 27 and 28. It says there, God did this so that men would seek Him and perhaps reach out for Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us. For in Him we live and move and have our being. God created us to be in relationship with Him. So whether or not we're serving others, we're having life experiences, or even if we're in the middle of suffering, maybe more important when we're in the middle of suffering, if we can look to Him and our identity in Christ and what does He have for us, that is ultimately how we'll find lasting meaning.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation about finding meaning and optimizing retirement. So which way resonates most with you? Do you find meaning from serving or experiences or suffering? Or is it a combo of all 3? Regardless if you're having trouble finding meaning in retirement or worried about having the most meaningful life in your upcoming retirement, there's a way that we can help absolutely free. Here's what you can do. Go to our website, retirerepurpose.com, and click on Breakthrough Call. There's a link right at the top of the page. And during this call, we can get crystal clear on how you can have the most meaningful life and retirement. One more time, to schedule this call, go to retirerepurpose.com and click on Breakthrough Call to begin your repurpose journey today. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.